Hi, I'm Michael Santos, and I'm really looking forward to visiting the University of Washington. I especially look forward to speaking with students in Dr. Barbara Toews' class, and I know that she is working diligently to prepare those students for professional lives in the criminal justice system. And it's encouraging for me that she is spending so much time to help them understand their awareness, the values and skills, and to think reflectively about the system. So it's my hope that I can share with you my own personal experiences about how I interacted with criminal justice professionals through my 26-year journey in federal prison. And I encourage all of you students to ask me any questions at all. In preparation for that presentation, I wanted to respond to a couple of ways that I think that I can help you understand how criminal justice professionals influenced my life as a long-term prisoner. And Dr. Toews asked me to respond to a couple of different questions. I'm going to read them on the screen as I film here, and just kind of respond in an organic way with hopes that it will prompt you to ask some specific questions when I visit you later or in early October. Dr. Toews wanted to know who were the different criminal justice professionals that had an influence on my life throughout the journey. Well, let's be clear that it started for me on August 11th, 1987, when DEA agents arrested me. So that would have been my first encounter with the criminal justice system, were the DEA agents who actually took me into custody. When they took me into custody, I interacted with correctional officers, case managers, counselors, people who were operating the prison system where I was held during my pretrial experience. And then, of course, indirectly, I interacted with the United States Attorney's Office as they were prosecuting me. Then once I was convicted, with federal probation officers who prepared my pre-sentence investigation. And then after that, I was transitioned back into the into the prison system. And again, it would have been counselors, case managers, correctional officers, the custody staff. And I was immersed in that system for 9,500 days as a federal prisoner. Then I transitioned to a halfway house, so I interacted with criminal justice professionals at that level. And then, of course, when I concluded my obligation to the Bureau of Prisons on August the 13th, 2012, I transitioned into what's called supervised release, and I'm still under that level of supervision from a federal probation officer. And indirectly, I also have some interaction with the United States Parole Commission, but that's only indirectly. Those were the criminal justice professionals who had an influence on my life. And the next question is, how did those criminal justice professionals influence my journey throughout the system? Well, the primary portion of my system started when I was in prison, because I went to prison when I was 23 years old, and I didn't conclude that obligation until I was 49 years old. So every day for 9,500 days, I was in the criminal justice system. And guards had a big influence on my life because they determined, or the system had an influence on my life. It determined what I could eat, what I could study, with whom I could interact, how I could prepare for my success upon release. And there, of course, were some who were helpful that would allow me to, for example, do my work or pursue this path that I was on toward my goals because they looked at me as an individual. There were others that had a much more difficult influence on my life because they blocked me from completing programs that I wanted to complete. For example, I got my undergraduate degree in prison, my master's degree in prison, with a lot of support from staff, but then I didn't have support from staff when I was in a PhD program, and that put an end to my formal studies. There were guards who had enormous discretion on me, and that would have an ability to influence the types of programs that I was involved in, or the types of relationships that I was involved in. For example, the rules hold that if you don't know somebody prior to your imprisonment, you can't visit those people during your imprisonment. So it discourages you from reaching out and finding new relationships. For example, if I wanted Barbara Toews to come and visit me in prison because I didn't know her prior to my imprisonment, rules would block her from coming. Now, a guard could choose, he has the discretion to override that rule, but in many, many instances, I was blocked from that type of support. And so I would consider that to be a very negative influence on my adjustment through prison. It would discourage me from working to build a strong support network that I could use to emerge successfully. And I'll give you many examples of that during my presentation. But if you have any questions about it, please ask, because I can tell you that as a criminal justice professional, there are many opportunities that you will have to be helpful to an individual who's working to prepare himself for success, but there will also be many opportunities for you to obstruct or discourage individuals from working toward preparing for success upon release. Another question that you should consider is the importance of communication skills, and what I consider for an individual to have good communication skills in prison. Well, as far as a criminal justice professional, I can tell you that a criminal justice professional that gives the best communication skills is just very straightforward and matter of fact about what they expect. A great example was a warden who presided over one of the prisons where I was confined. His name was Dennis Luther, and he used to have regular town hall meetings and tell the men inside, hey, there's nothing I can do to change the past. Okay, you've been convicted in a court of law, you've been sentenced to prison, and you're now in this prison. I can't undo that. I don't have any discretion on adjusting whether you should be in prison or shouldn't be in prison. What I do have discretion on is how you serve your time in here. And I have discretion over budgets. So I can determine whether I'm going to use my budget to provide you with more products and services that can help you build a better life, or I can use my budget to put up more custody structures that will block you and control you. And it's your choice. So I'm going to give you the choice. If you guys abide by the rules of my institution and you don't engage in violence or try to escape or corrupt my staff, I'm going to provide my budget to provide you with a lot more tools and resources to live the best life in here that you can. If you do, well, I can respond to it that way also. I really appreciated that level of communication, and because of his communication, he had enormous respect from the 1,500 or so men who were serving time inside of that medium security prison. So it's that level of communication with just total clarity. Hey, here's what I can do. Here's what I can't do. Here's what I expect from you. Here's what you can expect from me. And if you have questions, let's talk about it. I'll tell you if it's in my purview or my control. I can help. I will. If I can't, I'm going to tell you that as well. But let's figure out how we can make the best possible use of our time together. I always found that to be very helpful as far as communication skills from the criminal justice professionals with whom I serve. And that even extends now that I'm on supervised release. I have a probation officer who gives me a lot of liberty because I'm totally communicating with him about what I am striving to do. He is telling me what he expects of me, and by understanding each other, I know what I need to do to comply with his expectations, and I know that if I don't, I'm going to pay a price for that. There's a question here about whether I have experienced much collaboration among different segments or partners who are in the criminal justice system and how their frontline staff. I don't find a lot of collaboration between the interagencies, and that's how I take this question: collaboration between interagencies. For example, the United States Attorney's Office, the United States Probation Office, the Bureau of Prisons, and the United States Parole Commission. To give you a very clear example of that, after I concluded my obligation to the Bureau of Prisons in the first year, a federal U.S. attorney and my probation officer made a motion to the federal court and stated that I shouldn't be on supervised release any further. A federal judge signed that order saying I no longer needed to be under supervision. But the United States Parole Commission is a completely separate entity, and it's not beholden to what the federal judge says or what my probation officer said or what a U.S. attorney said. And so it continues to keep me under supervised release or special parole. And I will be on this until like 2035 or something like that, unless something changes. If the U.S. Parole Commission communicated with my probation officer and with a U.S. attorney and with a federal judge, they would see that this is the type of wastefulness of resources that leads to a lot of problems in our criminal justice system and high recidivism rates, because it discourages people from pursuing a path to excellence, of pursuing a path of saying, hey, I want to serve this sentence and then get on with my life. Instead, we're very beholden in this system to the rules and policies and procedures instead of communication and common sense. So I would like to see more collaboration in this system, because then the people who are overseeing me could communicate more effectively with the people who don't oversee me but yet have a lot of power over me. And so I hope that we can have that discussion when I meet in person with you. The last question is why I think it is important for criminal justice professionals to be reflective on their work. Well, here's the issue. If you're going to be a criminal justice professional rather than just a functionary, you're going to be thinking about what is the best possible outcome from this system. Well, what we want, I think, all of us as tax-paying citizens, is we want a criminal justice system that helps people emerge successfully as law-abiding, contributing, tax-paying citizens. And so that requires you to use discretion, to reflect and say, is it absolutely necessary to keep people locked and trapped in this side of the system, obstruct people from meeting people, for example, as I mentioned earlier in this earlier example. Barbara Toews wouldn't have been able to come in and guide or mentor me while I was incarcerated because the rules hold that I didn't know her before. As a criminal justice professional, I would say it's important to use your discretion and determine, is this in the best interest of what we're trying to accomplish with our criminal justice system, which is create safer communities, which is ensure that people emerge as law-abiding, functioning citizens? If we are, how does this policy or procedure influence this particular individual? And so it's important to reflect continuously and saying, am I simply enforcing a rule, or am I advancing the purposes of this organization? And I guess for me, that should begin with the question of, what do we want this organization to achieve? I would like to think our criminal justice system should be working toward community safety and helping people inside emerge as law-abiding, tax-paying citizens. You have to reflect on what your values would be in building a career in criminal justice. And if you'd like to have an open discussion on that when I'm in class, I want to encourage you. You can feel free to ask me anything. I will respond to any question about my life prior to prison, my 26-year journey through prison, and the 2-year journey I've had since I concluded my obligation to the Bureau of Prisons, and I've been working outside. So that is just a simple video. I again want to encourage you to have some questions for me. I'll be sharing my story in about, we'll have about 60 minutes together. And I'll certainly reserve a lot of time for Q&A. So again, thank you very much for this opportunity to share. And I look forward to meeting all of the students in Dr. Toews' class in early October. Thank you very much.